years ago, I would see these mysteriously floating orbs, like amber-colored orbs up in the sky, and me and some other friends like, "What is that? Is it a UFO? What is it?" Well, we later found out after I became more familiar with Bombay Beach and all that, there's a this is actually a single frame from a time lapse that I shot. I've won a couple contests with this shot too. I don't frequently enter photo contests, but
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Photographer Profile. My guest today is Kevin. Hey, Kevin, how are you doing?
doing good. How about you? Hey, everyone.
Great. Just give us an introduction about yourself and your photography for those people watching.
I make a lot of my money doing real estate photography, but as a hobby and as my art, I do a lot of nighttime photography, taking photos of the Milky Way, doing star trails. I also do a lot of sunsets too. Don't do a whole lot of portraits, and I take a lot of selfies and self portraits. But I love shooting the Milky Way and star trails pretty much the most, and sunsets.
And before we get to your photo showcase, where are you located exactly for those people
I'm in
wondering?
Bombay Beach, California, which is in Imperial County. It's in Southern California, for those that don't know. Um, it's about an hour north of El Centro, about 2.5 hour drive from San Diego, and 2.5 hours from LA, out in the desert in Imperial County by this
And
giant lake called the Salton Sea, and the lake is rapidly drying up.
are you single, taken? Is complicated? What is
I'm
your status?
single. I used to be married, but I got divorced several years ago, and I like being single and free.
Awesome. Can't blame you for that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a look at your first picture showcase here. I'll share. Go ahead and give us the background and why you wanted to feature this photo.
Yeah, this one was about 2 or so years ago. I'm on an email list where I get notified of SpaceX launches. I know basically the trajectory of the rockets, all that where to go. So I went up on this mountaintop, about 5,000 feet in altitude in San Diego County called Palomar Mountain, and got this even though there's light pollution down below, as you can see, up above, it's nice and dark up there and the air is thinner and all that. It was kind of the perfect environment for shooting the launch. Also, this launch happened, I want to say about 20 or 30 minutes after sunset, which is perfect timing because if the launch happens when it's too bright outside, you won't see it unless you're pretty close to Vandenberg, the launch site. Also, if the launch happens in the middle of the night, or, even if it happens more than an hour past sunset, it's nowhere near as dramatic as this. You don't see the exhaust plume and all that. All you would see is that little orangish red tip. So the reason why the exhaust plume is lit up the way it is here is because of the last remaining daylight.
How long was this exposure, this shot?
This one was about 4 seconds. And I
Oh,
believe
wow.
I did ISO 2000 or ISO 3200.
How did this shot do on social media? Did SpaceX see it or
I
did
went
you
pretty
get any
good. I've
feed?
never gotten acknowledgement from SpaceX or Elon Musk, but this one did pretty well. Got lots of likes and comments.
It's probably one of the best I've seen of that event.
Thanks.
I really like it. So let me
Yeah.
stop sharing here. All right, before we look at your next picture, do you have any hobbies outside of photography that you enjoy?
I'm mostly camping, although that's pretty much what I do full time now. Up until 2017, when I was married and I was working in tech full time, I had a house in the suburbs and lived a normal life. Although I still went camping a lot. Now I'm camping literally like 50 feet from the edge of the Salton Sea out here.
And that's your home. That's where
It's
you
my
have a
home. Yeah, I'm
mobile
living in
home.
my RV and has everything I need. I may have a kitchen, bathroom, queen size bed. I installed a whole bunch of solar and a mini split air conditioner, so I'm off the grid, but I still have the comforts of home.
Do you think you can do that for the long haul or you want to get back to suburbia
Oh, I don't ever want to
someday?
go back to suburbia. What I eventually want to do is actually buy some land out here in Bombay Beach, and build a container home, something a little more permanent. But no, I have no desire to go back to the city or suburbs. I couldn't afford to do that. I like here, the light pollution's low. The people here are awesome. It's a lot of fellow other artists out here.
I haven't been
It's
out
not,
there yet, but I'll come visit you
yeah, you
someday.
should definitely check it out sometime.
Okay, let's take a look at your next photo here.
Yeah,
Hypnotizing.
this is one I was really proud. Probably one of my most proudest achievements, and I actually sold a copy of this in a gallery earlier in the year.
Congratulations.
These are this is this wooden bridge is called the Goat Canyon Trestle. It's on a now abandoned railroad line, but it was the first railroad to connect San Diego to the rest of the country. And it was built by this entrepreneur of the day who his name was John D. Spreckles. He was also in the sugar business. And if you've ever been to San Diego, there's the Spreckles Organ Pavilion, the Spreckles Theater. He donated a lot to the city of San Diego, but made his fortune in railroads and sugar. This is the world's largest wooden curved railroad trestle. Now, to get out here, there's no access roads or anything. I mean, this was built back in the days when, they would move the train. They would build the track in front of the train and then gradually move the train and continue that out. I had to hike. It's a mostly level hike. There's a few areas where you had to climb over some boulders, but it's about 7 miles each way.
Oh, wow.
So I hiked out there. I camped I'm at my base camp, which is by Dos Cabezas. There's an old water tank there. Yeah, I camped there and brought only the camera gear I absolutely needed, plus water and lights and all that. Now, there's several tunnels that you have to go through, but they've gated those off. They're trying to deter trespassers, but there's trails that bypass all the tunnels and the gate. This is about 2.5 hours of star trails. For one of the frames, I used just a small LED flashlight with a warm white color temperature and was able to light up the framing here of the trestle. In fact, you can see some light kind of spilled out into the foreground in the lower right.
How many intervals did it shoot at?
I generally do 30 seconds, and then it was about 2 or 2.5 hours. So I use the classic star stacks. I still think it works the best for filling in the gaps and all that.
I haven't done a star trail shot like this, but it's on my bucket list.
Don't think like you're shooting the Milky Way. You want to keep the ISO a bit lower, like between say 400 to 1,000. You don't necessarily want to open the aperture all the way up either. You need to experiment by using a somewhat smaller aperture than you would for Milky Way, and also a little bit lower ISO. You can bring out the colors of the stars a lot more. Like a lot of people think they do star trails, they need to shoot at ISO 3200 and f2.8. You'll get some really bright star trails, but then you don't get the colors like you're seeing, especially on some of the outer circles, especially to the left and the far right here.
How did you get into photography to begin with? Going back a little bit.
Going way back when I was growing up in Illinois, and my parents signed me up for just with the local Parks and Recreation Department, a photography class. I learned how to shoot with 35 millimeter black and white film. I just took a class at the local rec center. We learned how to shoot film, black and white film. It was Kodak Tri-X film, and then develop it in the darkroom. And ever since then, I've always been doing photography. I did it for a living until around 2017 or so. I was working in tech, and photography was just kind of a hobby.
Would you say now it's 100% your source of income, photography?
Yeah, it's 100%. What makes most of my money though is doing real estate photography. I don't make a whole lot off my art, at least not yet. And it's kind of hard to make money off of art, like the photos you've just shared, my star trails and then the SpaceX launch.
Do you do drone photography as part of your real estate?
Oh yeah, I do drone as well. Also, I love doing this twilight photography, which is in a house, you have people turn all the lights on and open all the blinds, and then about 10 to 15 minutes past sunset, then I take photos of the home, and it really makes it stand out because you get a really nice saturated sky. It's even better if there happens to be a colorful sunset and there's just the right mix of clouds. It's a way for agents to make their listing photos stand out a bit more than just the usual daytime photos. So. And I make more money doing it too, so it's a win-win.
Well, if I lose my job, maybe I'll give a go at real estate.
Yeah,
photography?
the hard thing is it takes I'm not kind of more of an introverted person. It took me about 5.5 years to ramp up, whereas now sometimes I get too much work. But prior to that time, I was competing against hundreds of other
Yeah.
photographers. It wasn't until I started doing more and more photo shoots, and then clients would hire me back and they would refer me to other agents they knew, and it kind of just grew organically. But it took a good 5.5 years.
Well, congrats on putting in that effort and building up
Thanks. Oh,
that
yeah.
that database.
Any kind of self-employment, most people give up after anywhere from a few weeks to a year or less.
All right, let's take a look at your next photo here. Is this SpaceX again?
Yeah, this is SpaceX, and of course, this is at Bombay Beach. You'll notice that swing in the water, which is one of probably the most well-known art installations in Bombay Beach. Now, as of a couple months ago, with the Salton Sea drying up, that swing is now on dry land. I just figured this was perfect because, again, I know about the launches ahead of time, and then I like the nice post-sunset colors. And I wanted to get the swing and a little bit of a reflection in my frames.
Are you allowed to
Unfortunately,
swing on the swing? Do people swing on the
oh yeah,
swing?
I've
Is
swung
that
on it when it's been in the water. I've taken selfies on it, and various influencers and all that would come here and swing on it in the water. You'd have to go through some thick mud to get to it, but
yeah.
it's worth. Now it's all on dry land, just because that's a whole nother story that the government's basically letting the Salton Sea dry up. They don't want to maintain it anymore.
Oh wow. I did not know that. That's good to know.
The swing is still here. It's just drying up so quick. Every day I notice the Salton Sea receding a few more inches.
Your photos might become a historical artifact. Look at what it
Yeah.
used to look like back.
Oh, yeah. This place has a fascinating history, too, because like the heydays was in the 50s and 60s when there were all kinds of resorts. There were even yacht clubs and golf courses. From what I heard is on the weekends, people would wait in line for hours to launch their boats because the fishing was really good with corvina and other fish.
Let me
Yeah.
stop sharing here. What excites you to keep going out there and shooting? I mean, besides your income, obviously, to shoot these landscapes.
I like things that, people don't normally get to see or experience. Like, I've been to Yosemite a couple times, for example, but to me it's too crowded, and it's just too many people take pictures. Or where's that? I mean, we're starting to get more tourists here at Bombay Beach, but still, I think what I like about the whole Salton Sea area is it's a very unique, kind of one of a kind landscape. Going to all the top 10 tourist destinations in California or the United States or world, I'd rather be out here. But
What
yeah.
would you say is the best piece of photography advice you've received or you learned throughout your career that you could pass on to other people? Anything come to mind?
Too many people, if they're starting out, they're obsessed about their equipment rather than their technique. There's a lot of cell phones now that can take pretty decent photos, but it's all about planning the composition and the timing and the lighting and everything. That's the number one thing. Too many amateurs, they fixate too much on the gear and not their skills. You don't
Gotcha.
have to spend a lot of money on camera gear to be a great photographer.
There are some limits if you're shooting sports in a dimly lit arena
Yeah,
or something,
you need one of those, yeah, $10,000 or $20,000 long, lenses that's 300 millimeter, 600 millimeter plus, and it's f2.8, and that's going to set you back 20 or 30 grand. There are some exceptions, but like a lot of times for landscapes and all that, it's within reason. It's more about finding the right angle and composition and time of day based on how the shadows and the lighting looks and all that.
Let's take a look at another one of your photos here. You have plenty to look at.
Oh yeah,
This is a very cool landscape
thanks.
shot.
So this is out in the Anza Borrego Desert. It's about an hour and a half or so south of Joshua Tree, way less crowded. One of the awesome things is you can camp almost anywhere. It's one of the few parks that I know of in the United States where, in general, unless it's an area that's been overused or there's some endangered species nearby, you can generally take your tent or trailer and just set it up wherever and set up camp. You don't have to go to a designated campground. Anyways, this area here is known as Clark Dry Lake, and just like the name implies, it's a dry lake bed. What I really liked is you got some succulents here, you got the cracked, very dry earth, but then there was this rare summer rainstorm that was working its way towards. This is actually a single frame from a time lapse that I shot. I've won a couple contests with this shot too. I don't frequently enter photo contests, but yeah, I just like the kind of the what's the word? The contrast between, you see this dry cracked earth, and the desert plant there, and then you got this rain that's approaching in the distance, which was both rain and dust, mostly rain, but and the way the light was hitting it.
It's like an impending doom coming at you. You
Yeah.
can't do
Oh yeah.
anything
Yeah, you
to
can't
avoid
escape.
it.
Yep. Yep, that's what I was going for.
This is a great example of having an interesting foreground and background and doing
Oh
the
yeah.
rule of thirds. Pretty good composition here.
Thanks.
Let's go to the next one. Woo, this is electrifying.
Yeah, literally. This is out at Bombay Beach. There, besides just this phone booth, there are numerous art installations like this. The lights are powered by solar. This was made by a guy who goes by Iron Dad. He always swears he's not an artist. He actually works in tech for a living, but he creates art. It's funny because he'll swear he's not an artist, but he is. It happened in August about 3 years ago. There was a storm approaching. This is actually 3 separate exposures, but I didn't move my camera at all during it. A couple of the lightning bolts on the left were one exposure, and actually those 3 that you see on the left were one exposure, and then the phone booth was another, and then the one on the right. I saw the thunderstorm in the distance, which just would have been east of here, and I was watching it get closer and closer, but miraculously it wasn't raining and it wasn't too windy where I set my camera up, which usually it's difficult shooting a thunderstorm because if you get close enough to get a nice shot of it, you're getting the camera shake from the wind or you're getting rained on. But in this case, the storm got close enough, but not too close.
I'm glad you didn't get hit by these lightning bolts.
I'm pretty daring with nature. Like I wasn't afraid of getting hit by light. I mean, if it had started striking like 100 feet away or something, that's a different story.
Did this shot win any awards? I mean, this shot is amazing. You had to get some kind of award or something, some kind of exposure
I've
for
sold
this
a few
shot.
copies of it, but like I said, I don't really enter a whole lot of contests. I would occasionally enter in the San Diego County Fair, which used to be called the Del Mar Fair, but occasionally I've gotten honorable mentions for whatever reason. I don't know. They never seem to really be taking much of a liking to my works.
How long was each exposure? Like 30 seconds? Or how long did you, like bulb mode when you shot this?
I used a lightning trigger. I used a Pluto trigger that triggers when the lightning happens. But yeah, each of these exposures was about 5 or 10 seconds. About 5 seconds with the trigger for the lightning, and then about 10 seconds at a lower ISO for the phone booth and the heart-shaped antenna and the rest of the foreground, the background.
How does the lightning trigger work? It senses lightning and it shoots?
Technically, what it really does is it senses a sudden change in light, and it triggers the shutter within a tiny fraction of a second. So it doesn't necessarily sense lightning per se. I mean, if a car drove out on the beach, which they do, and its headlights shone, the sensor would have triggered. You got to calibrate it. It looks for a sudden change in the brightness. That's how it works behind the scenes. The only other way to shoot lightning without a trigger is to just do it like you were shooting a time lapse, where you just do back to back, say 10-second exposures.
That's what I usually do.
Using an intravolometer. That's how I shoot meteor showers too. Just do back to back, usually 20 or 30-second exposures. I pick a composition I really like, and then you just hope that a nice bright meteor goes through it.
A couple more questions before we look at some more photos. How do you feel about AI in photography, the big buzzword this last couple of years? Any opinions on that?
I think photography should still be what you actually capture, although where AI can be a nice tool is for what people used to do dodging and burning in the darkroom is you can remove something unwanted from the photo a lot easier. Some people will take a stock photo of lightning and paste it in. To me, that's cheating. I use AI more along the lines for editing, as far as removing, like, say there was a car or something that drove through my frame or something. Sometimes in my real estate photos, like, I'll do virtual staging where I'll add furniture to a house, and I use AI for that. But me personally, I consider it wrong to use AI to add something to an artistic photo that isn't actually there.
I think most photographers would agree with you. there, I
Yeah,
hope.
otherwise then it crosses over into, and it's its whole own category, digital art.
Yeah. Another thought-provoking question. What do you want to happen to your photos when you die, when you're no longer here? Have you ever thought about that? All
That
these
is,
photos you've
I would
taken?
hope they'd be preserved on the internet, maybe put on in a gallery or something.
Do you have a website now that you
I
host them
do. I don't
all on?
really maintain it much. The most up to date is my Flickr, my Instagram, and my Facebook. I need to start maintaining my website more. Like I have a Smug Mug account. Sometimes list some of my photos for sale. In fact, I haven't updated that in a couple of months. I need to update that.
Well, you're welcome
Yeah,
for the reminder.
I would hope my photos would continue to be preserved and made available to the public after I die.
All right, well, let's look at some more photos. That's what we're all here for, right?
Yep.
This is a miss shot, I think you said.
Yeah, yes and no. So several years ago, um, in San Diego, this place called Sycamore Canyon. It was one of the Atlas rocket test facilities way back in the day, in the 60s and 70s. This was a windowless building, and it was pretty dusty in there, and there was water that it was partially flooded. That's just the sunlight shining through, but to me, it kind of looks like lasers. But I wish I had focused a little better and probably used a narrower aperture so that both the foreground and background would have been a bit clearer.
Yeah, it
Like I
doesn't
love
look.
the composition. Yeah, I love the composition and stuff, but like this one, I didn't give you a super high res copy, but
It looks like something out of the Walking Dead or someo's basement or
yeah, it doesn't.
something like
I think I
that.
titled it when I posted it on Flickr years ago, which was before Facebook and all that, and Instagram didn't even exist. I called something about using lasers to melt a hole in the ground or something, even though it's just sunlight shining through holes in the wall.
Before we get to your critique photo, one more question.
Mm.
If you could take a portrait of any celebrity, alive or dead, what celebrity would you like to shoot with? Anything that comes to mind?
I'm not really big on celebrities or portraits. I'll always be a fan of the Back to the Future trilogy. In that case, it would be Steven Spielberg.
Awesome. That's good
I
enough
always
for
liked
me.
his artistic style, and he never gets too political or anything. But I always liked his creativity, and I really liked the whole Back to the Future trilogy, just the whole going forward and backward in time, and the way it was done.
Okay. Let's look at your critique photo. First, give us a little background before I give my
So
critique
the
here.
one and only remaining bar here in Bombay Beach is the Ski Inn. You'll notice on the sign it says lowest bar in the Western Hemisphere. This bar in the rest of Bombay Beach is about 230 feet below sea level. It's literally the lowest community in the United States. There are parts of Death Valley that are lower, but they're just part of a national park. They're not an actual community. So we're below sea level, minus 230 something feet. Ski Inn's been around in various forms since the 1920s. Well, what I did get this photo, I used my drone. I have a DJI Air 3. I really like the way the sunset looked, plus the old neon, which eventually they're going to fix up top. In post-production, I did brighten up the non-working neon up above, but I'm really happy with my composition and all that, but I'm wondering what could I do next time to make this even better.
From my critique, I would say a lot on the right-hand side past the sign doesn't really add much to the photo side. Maybe crop that out and get closer to the actual sign itself. Same thing with a little bit of the top. Maybe crop it a couple things above the sunset part. Just kind of get closer.
I see what you mean. A little closer and you'd see a little more detail. Off to the right, it's kind of wasted space.
Right. Then maybe if you have the sign in the right-hand side of the frame, and then maybe find something interesting or a car or someone walking by in the left-hand frame to kind of give it kind of juxtaposition.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
But the color is perfect. Well, I'm going to throw a curveball at you.
Sure.
Just started doing this in my most recent podcast. I'm going to show you one of my pictures, and you give me a critique or what your thoughts are on it. Kind of turn the tables.
Cool.
Maybe you can guess where I took it at, too. That'd be kind of fun. You see it?
Oh, is that Seattle or? Or is it out of the country? This is
This
maybe
is out of the
somewhere.
country.
It's
This is out of
probably
the
in
country.
Japan or somewhere, maybe.
This is
I
Sydney,
haven't.
Australia.
Australia, okay. I haven't really left the continent. I've been to Mexico and I've been to Canada, and that's about it. That's it's pretty cool. I would say something I automatically always do and notice as a real estate photographer is I would have done the right off the bat. I would do perspective distortion correction. The buildings are leaning a little bit like this,
Yeah, I
which
see that.
until you fix that in post production, unless you're using a tilt shift lens, that's a standard procedure for real estate photography. The only trouble is depending on how much you have or haven't cropped it, though. You lose some image when you like if you were to tilt it so the buildings are straight. Of course, you're going to lose some height. So you wouldn't want to cut off. You would still want some white space between the top of the needle and the sky. And I
Yeah.
also like this lighted bridge down below. Might not even have hurt to try doing a in portrait mode. But yeah, otherwise I mean I like it.
Yeah, I'll try doing the perspective. I'm scared, like what you said, that's going to cut off a lot of the buildings and stuff
Yeah,
like
you can
that. So
try
we'll see
doing
how
the
it looks.
auto one, but then use the vertical one and just slowly slide the slider to the right. So you might not be able to fully correct it, but I think you will because there's not a whole lot of tilt here.
Well, thank you for your feedback. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Okay, a couple more questions, and then we'll wrap things up here. Do you have a dream shot that you haven't taken that's on your to-do list, a goal?
I'd love to shoot more lightning, which just doesn't happen a lot out here in Southern California, especially this year. I think one time I'm going to have to travel to Arizona next monsoon season.
That's cool. You're just mobile. You can just go wherever wherever
Oh
you
yeah,
want. Oh.
yeah, I can anywhere that I
Just
can
look at
camp.
the Weather Channel. Oh, lightning's going to be here next week.
Yep.
Let's go there.
Oh yeah. I guess the other thing would be too, and I'm not much of a cold weather person, but one of these times to go to Iceland and shoot the aurora borealis. That would be cool.
I think that's on most photographers' bucket list. That's sure on
Yeah,
mine
I've heard
too.
though it's difficult to time because generally unless you want to spend a lot of money, you got to book a flight in advance, but then you got to hope that the conditions are not too cloudy or anything. You got to hope the conditions are right. There's certain years and certain times of year where the magnetic storms are stronger.
I feel like there's so much other cool stuff there, like ice caves and
Yeah, that's true. It wouldn't be a wasted trip. It wouldn't be a wasted
Yeah.
trip, even if you didn't get the Northern Lights. But I think it's like one of the things we'd have to plan like a week or two trip just to be safe.
Okay, last question. Do you have any weird, wild, or crazy stuff you've seen during your photography out there? Anything you can share? Any experiences?
It was weird and crazy until I figured out what it was, and that was before I would be shooting photos of the Milky Way. Years ago, I would see these mysteriously floating orbs, like amber-colored orbs up in the sky. And me and some other friends was like, what is that? Is it a UFO? What is it? Well, we later found out after I became more familiar with Bombay Beach and all that, there's a military bombing range and training range. The mysterious UFOs are actually just giant amber flares. They're not like the typical flares that say like a ship would send up with the flare gun, for SOS.
Yeah.
They go up in the sky and they float. They stay there for like 5, 10, 15 minutes and they just seem to hover and move very slowly. Imagine seeing that from 50 miles away, a few of those, and you're like, what are those glowing things? Because you could probably see them 100 miles away. I mean, the desert is a great place to just see a lot of weird things in the sky to begin with. If you think about it, a lot of movies and TV shows, when there's a UFO scene, a lot of times it takes place out in a remote desert somewhere.
You haven't seen Bigfoot out there?
No, I mean, the most wildlife I've seen is once or a couple of times the rattlesnake. Fortunately, they're not too common out here in Bombay Beach. There's been coyotes, but nothing too bizarre or too weird.
That's good.
Yeah.
What is the best way for people to contact you? Do you prefer Instagram? What do you prefer? What's the best way for people to reach out?
Yeah, they can, direct message on Instagram or just email me, kevinkey@gmail.com.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to
No problem.
come on the podcast. I love looking at your pictures and hearing the stories.
Yeah, it was it's awesome to be interviewed by you and all that.
All right, well, we'll see you on Instagram. Have a great night. Thanks, Kevin.
You too. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.